please do your opening.
Yes. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here today. For the past 20 years, I have chosen to live, work, and raise my family in western Nebraska. I grew up in a farming community in southwest Ohio, very similar in size to our rural communities right here. We lived next door to my godparents, who were dairy farmers. During harvest, if I wasn't riding along in the combine or on the back of a hay wagon, I was in the kitchen helping pack lunch or dinner to take out into the fields. So I learned at a very young age the true meaning of hard work, discipline, and community. Civic engagement goes hand in hand with public service, and I'm fully committed and prepared to serve your families. I've advocated for conservative values on a local, state, and national level. I have more than 40 years of hands-on business experience where I've not only created budgets, but balanced them. I've worked at Cabela's for the past 18 years, 14 years in marketing, and the last 4 years in retail operations. It was also an honor to serve as a police officer in Sydney and be entrusted to protect our families. I worked in city and county government in prior positions earlier in my career and understand how important it is for government to be good stewards of your tax dollars. I spent much of this past year visiting with and listening to voters, and there's no doubt that property tax relief remains the top challenge facing our families in this district. Our state is built on a foundation of agriculture. We feed not just Americans, but the world. Property tax relief is my #1 priority. That's why, along with the Farm Bureau, I support LB 959 to slow the growth of agricultural valuation. This bill is not perfect, but it's a start. There have been many revisions in this bill in the past few weeks. I will be watching and listening closely to the public hearing for this amended bill on Thursday.
Thank you. Carl Elmshäuser.
So something a little bit different. I'm Carl Elmshäuser, and I want to thank the Farm Bureau and the Ogallala County Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event, for all of you coming out today. I know you care, and so do I. So I want to tell you a bit of a story. My father, as a second income, because he was a school principal, built kitchen cabinets in his garage. And one night when we were in the garage working on the kitchen cabinets, the newspaper was late again. And my dad said, "I think you can do better." And I said, "I think I can too." Soon after that, I had my own paper out. And over time, I doubled my subscription in 1976. For all those that know me out there, you might not know this. 1976, Parade Magazine selected me as a young Columbus winner as the best evening newspaper carrier in the state of Nebraska. And on to New York, the country of Yugoslavia for a week, and the country of Austria for a week. And that's part of where I learned that hard work does bring success, and public service and teamwork are important. So over time, what I've done then, at the age of 20, I joined the United States Marine Corps. I served our nation for 6 years in explosive ordnance disposal, bomb disposal. From there, I served in a variety of different capacities over time. Governor Heinemann appointed me to 2 terms on the Nebraska Rural Development Commission. I've served on the Ogallala Fire Department. I serve currently on the Ogallala City Council, Nebraska Regional Officials Council, and now also on the National Association of Development Organizations. Those aren't just titles or bravado. Those things are actually public service, working together, getting things accomplished for our community. In Ogallala, that also means Airport of the Year twice, Great Plains and the Great West Townhomes project. So again, I thank you for being here, and I want you to know that I care about the legislation that affects you, your community, and your business, and I would appreciate your vote on May 10th.
Thank you. Steve Erdman.
Thank you. I too appreciate the Farm Bureau and the Chamber for having me here this evening. My wife and I, we have 3 sons and their daughters, their wives, and they have 7.9 grandchildren. We have lived in Morrill County all of our adult life to this present time. I farmed there for 40 years, served on numerous co-op boards, national as well as local. I am now serving as a county commissioner in Morrill County. Why is all that important to you? It's important because I understand what representative form of government looks like. When those people have county issues, when the co-op people had co-op issues, They knew they could call me, they knew I'd respond, and they knew I would take their issues to the boardroom or as a county commissioner to the meeting, and I would solve their problem and get back to them what the solution could be. I've been accessible in every position that I've had. I will continue to be that way. As your representative, I understand what representative form of government looks like, and what it looks like is when you call me, I call you back. And when you have an issue or an idea, and you call my office and say, what's Erdman's position, my staff will be able to tell you what my position is, and if they can't tell you, I will call and tell you. And so, as we move forward, I think you will see that those things that I've served on and the things that I've done will serve you well if I become your senator, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And Wendell Gaston, please.
Hello, my name is Wendell Gasson. I want to thank you all for coming this evening. I want to thank the Farm Bureau and the Chamber for having this event. I was born in Sydney, was born and was raised in Potter, Nebraska. My dad ran a Texaco station in Potter for 50 years, where my mother helped out with the motel and grew up on a farm and helped with the motel and the gas station all those times. I graduated from Potter High School. I went to NJC on a track scholarship. I graduated from University of Wyoming Pharmacy School. I have an MBA from the University of Nebraska and a doctorate of pharmacy degree from the University of Kansas. After graduating from Wyoming, I moved back home to Sydney, bought a pharmacy, and I went to work. I married Deanna Farringer, who was from Sydney and is a Creighton graduate and is a nurse. We have 3 children and 4 grandchildren. My dad and 3 of my son-in-laws have all served in the military. Deanna and I have owned several businesses, which include Gaston Pharmacy in Sydney, Campbell Drug in Oshkosh, Flatwater Incorporated, and then a J.C. Penney catalog outlet. And I currently work as a pharmacist for Safeway. And Deanna is a nurse for the VA in clinic in Sydney. I've served on several state boards and several local boards, and I'm currently in my 4th term as city council person in Sydney. I've been mayor of Sydney 3 times and vice mayor 4 times. So I know a lot about city government and government as a whole. I'm currently serving on the executive board of the League of Municipalities as vice president of that board. I am the first person to serve on that board from Sydney in its 140-year history. I am currently the vice chairman of that board. I want to thank all the people coming tonight. My background, most of my uncles, friends, and cousins are in the farming industry. So I appreciate you coming. Ask good questions. We'll get honest answers, and I appreciate your vote.
Thank you. And so each candidate will be able to respond to my question in 90 seconds. And I'm going to start with Carl, will be the first one to answer this question. I'm sorry, it should be Mr. Elmsweiser, but so I'll try and go back to the Mr. Sorry. If elected, what would be your legislative priorities?
So the top 2 priorities, and the reason why they're together, is property tax relief, and the second is the state school aid formula. And you really can't talk about one without the other. And that's also consistent with, I believe, Farm Bureau policies as well. How the formula is set up and how we tax on property taxes are so combined that both of those have to be a priority. It will take time to do that. The state school aid formula that we know today as TIOSA came about in 1990. Its express purpose was to reduce property taxes, and here we are 26 years later, and we're not where we wanted to be. So my 2 top priorities, property tax relief and the state school aid formula.
Thank you. Mr. Erdman?
Thank you. I agree with Carl that the taxes are the number 1 thing we need to deal with. I'm not so sure that the TIOSA formula is broken. The original intent in 1990 was 1/3 property tax, 1/3 sales tax, 1/3, 20% of the income tax from each district. I believe if the state would go back to doing what the TIOSA formula had originally described for them to do, I think we could be okay. But what happened in 1990 when they collected that first 20% of income tax, that was such a great number that in their infinite wisdom they decided to drop back to 2%. And so consequently they didn't follow the recommendations of the TIOSA formula in the first place. But the TIOSA formula as it is today has got to be reworded where it's got to have some teeth put in it so that they cannot continue to do what they do. The state constitution says it is the state's obligation to provide free instruction for students K through 12. In the Bridgeport School District, we get $25,000 in state aid. The state government is not involved in that education at all. So the TIOSA formula, I think if it was adhered to as it was intended, I think might solve some of the problems. But the water is another issue that we need to deal with. And being in agriculture and the user and consumer of water, I understand the significance of that and the conservation of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gaston.
Thank you. I spent the first 3 months after I announced my campaign going around to the communities and asking them what are the issues. And of course, number one was property tax. And that's an issue that's developed over a period of years because as one of the original surveys that was done called Syracuse survey in the 1990s told the legislature that they needed to give more state aid to the schools, the counties, and the cities. And that was tabled, and ever since then they've decreased that amount. So that's why we have a local property tax problem. And it's not going to go away quickly. We're going to have to work on that hard because people back east believe that that's an easy way to take care of issues. Second issue that came up over and over is water issues. And I had several bankers tell me that we'd like you on the Natural Resources Board because we feel water is one of the major issues out here for our 47th district. And so that's also been one. The third thing that came up is students, and we send our kids away, why don't you develop something that we can bring them back? We've been very fortunate in Sidney, Nebraska, that our average age has went down over the last 10 years. We've been able to find ways to bring back our college-educated kids back home. These kids want to come back home, so my priority is going to find out some kind of small business or agricultural type programs that we can bring them back home. Those will be my 3 priorities.
Thank you. Ms. Pops?
Thank you. So yes, as I have traveled the district, and I have literally knocked on hundreds and hundreds of doors, and I have put thousands of miles on my vehicle to reach out to our voters to ask them what is important to you. Then the number one issue is property tax reform. And that is my number one priority. And what I would like to see done is I will focus my efforts for our farmers to reduce the taxable value of our ag lands to 40%. And I do believe, absolutely, that school aid formula is severely broken. There is an imbalance in how Nebraska funds its schools. When that funding formula was created, the state never anticipated that the value of our ag lands would skyrocket to 176% over the last 10 years. So I am in support of LB. It's the second part of the governor's plan on property taxes. The revenue part is LB 958, and the school funding is LB 959. And that sets benchmarks for measured growth in spending in our school districts, our community colleges, and our educational service units. And it makes the revision to the state school funding formula called the needs stabilization. That is broken, it needs fixed, and this is a start. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is, are you comfortable with the state's current water management system? If no, what changes would you support? And we're going to start with Mr. Erdman.
Well, the state's water management system is complex in its entirety. We have the Natural Resource District that manages surface water, and the NRDs manage the groundwater. And in our area, in one county to the next, one NRD has a pumping restriction. The NRD across the street in a different county has no restriction. The natural resources of the state, the people who manage the surface water, aren't really associated as well as they could be and cooperating with the NRDs as well as they could. We need to bring some similarity to the regulations that the NRDs are placing on groundwater users so that we don't have a discrepancy from one groundwater NRD to the other. What happens in the county is when they don't find enough agricultural irrigated sales, they'll go across the road and they take some sales from another county who may be in a different NRD and has no restriction. And you've got to compare apples to apples, and when you have restriction in one county and not the other, that is not comparable. So there are issues to be dealt with in the NRDs, and the NRDs have a taxing authority that they can spend and levy on your taxes, and we need to pay particular attention to who is elected to the NRD. I will tell you right now, it's more important to describe and discuss with those people running for the NRD than who is your senator, because what they do will affect you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Guest.
I have worked, the city of Sydney's worked really close with the NRDs because we had a water problem. We ran out of water in Sydney just right after I got elected. And we worked closely with the NRDs to find another water supply. I think the NRD system is, there's 23 different NRDs across the state, but there's 23 different areas that have different kind of water